Oh David, you who had it all figured out. You who understood that life just isn't fair sometimes. You who were so disappointed though you tried so hard. Oh David, oh David. Reminds me of my friends, we'll call them James and Noriko. The other day, I got a call from him, which was rather surprising. Not that I got a call, but the request itself was surprising. See, they're not what I would call quote-unquote religious people, so, religion isn't usually what we talk about over here. It's usually the Seahawks and the Bears. But on that particular day last week, he asked if I would come and pray with his wife. And that she said she had wanted me to come and pray. In fact, even to wear my collar as I did it. I thought, wow, this is interesting. But see, they have 3 boys together. She has a boy from a previous marriage, so they've got these 4 boys. And she has always wanted a girl. I mean, she is just overflowing with this maternal love for a little girl. And now as they're getting older, they realize that it would cost tens of thousands of dollars to try to reshape fate, if you will, to increase the odds, the probability of having a girl. But yet knowing that even if they spend $50,000, $60,000, that there's no guarantee that they're going to have a child, let alone have a girl. And the thought of having another boy, oh God help us. And so she wanted me to come and pray that she could somehow be at peace with the fact that she would never have a little girl. I was impressed by that. Because you see, that's not the only part of the story. See, it's not just that she and he don't have kids together, don't have girls together. See, James, when he used to live in Japan, was kind of a playboy, I guess you'd call it. And he had 2 children from 2 Japanese women while he was living there. And as you might have guessed, they were both girls. And so it kills her to think that he can go and make girls with other people, but not with her. And that's kind of the dagger in the heart. And so I did. I went and I prayed that she would find another outlet for that maternal love, for that maternal instinct, that she would find some other way to feel like she had a daughter and that God could use her as a vessel as she is overflowing with this wonderful love, but somehow to find serenity in the fact that she will never have a girl to call her own. So I hope that it did some good. I hope that it made a difference and gave her some sort of peace, but nonetheless, I'm sure they feel like there's somewhere along the line been a broken promise, right? They're good parents, they take care of their kids. And isn't that the way the world is supposed to work? That if you do good things, that God blesses? All they want is a little girl, for Pete's sake. There's 6 kids between the 2 of them. Isn't it possible that the 2 of them can come together and make one that is a female? Why does it have to be so difficult? And then there's David, oh David, you who seem to have it all figured out. David, who was one of the first who was removed from the direct voice of God. Think about it, we had all of these people who heard from God directly. And then came the kings. And the kings needed prophets because they were removed enough from God that they couldn't directly hear the voice of God. Right? Saul needed Samuel. David needed Nathan. And so David says, look at this. Look at this. I've been so blessed. I'm in this huge palace of cedar. It's amazing. But who am I to deserve this? I am going to build a house for God. I'm going to return the favor. And God says, oh, silly David. When have I ever dwelt in a house? When has it ever been that 4 walls around me could contain me? Haven't I always gone with my people? Haven't I always gone where I wish, but you would put me in a house? You do not understand the purpose of this house, and therefore you will not be the one to build it for me. But your son, you will have a son, and this offspring of yours will build me a house, not to contain me, but as a tribute to my glory, as a place to come, to worship, and to sacrifice. It will be a vessel between my people and me, just as you, O David, were supposed to be that person. See, David thinks also that if you do good things, then good things are going to happen. Look at the psalm that Brent just read. Most likely David wrote that. Out of the 150 psalms, it was thought for a long time that David wrote all of them. Now it's believed that he wrote probably a third of them. But it's likely that he wrote number 89. And when you look at the language, David, 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 as long as you keep the rules, everything is going to be great. But if you don't, you're going to get punished. Now, I'm always going to love you. And I'm always going to keep your throne through your sons established here on earth forever and forever. But if you make me mad, I can't help but punish you. Sounds an awful lot like David in hindsight is writing this, that he's figured out a few things finally. Well, we know that the son to build this temple was Solomon, but how did we get to that point? If we think that if you do good, then good things happen, and if you do bad, you get punished, and this is just part of this whole divine retribution principle, then what did David do to mess up his life so poorly? Well, I encourage you to read all of 2 Samuel. Read the whole thing, because it's a humdinger. He was not a good father, first of all. He had Amnon and Tamar. Amnon, Tamar's half-brother, rapes Tamar. And then what happens? Absalom, Tamar's brother, blood brother, waits 2 years and finally kills Amnon. And David's heart is broken. And so he tells Absalom, you're out of here. He exiles him. And then Joab, David's advisor, is trying to convince David, this is your son, for Pete's sake. Let him come back. Show him some forgiveness, would you? And finally he says, fine, he can come back into my kingdom, prepare a home for him, but he is not to come into my presence. So for 2 years, Absalom was still out there, exiled in this house, unable to see his father. How's that for love? How's that for compassion and understanding? And finally, after 2 years, after being bid by this woman, see, Joab tells this woman, says, you know, the king doesn't seem to understand things until it's told to him in a parable. And then he realizes from those stories that he's actually the one who's wrong in the stories. So I want you to go and tell him that you have become widowed, and all of your children were killed, and you have one son left, and that he was somehow responsible for all this, and that you're afraid that people are going to retaliate against the one son that you have left, and they're going to kill him. And see what he says. And so she does. And she talks to David, and David said, do not worry, I will make sure nobody lays a finger nor harms a hair on the head of your son. Do not worry, you have my word. And the woman says to him, O king, you are so compassionate and so kind to me who you do not even know. Why is it that you can't show such compassion for your own son? Ouch. And so fine. Okay. Joab put you up to this, by the way, didn't he? Yeah, I knew it. He always does this kind of thing. Okay, fine. Tell him my son can come to me. And the son comes and he kisses his ring and everything is all better. But it's not. Absalom, by this time, his heart is hardened. It's cold. He hates his father. And as he's still out there on the edges of the kingdom and all these people are saying, oh, we've got all this stuff going on, and it seems like the king doesn't pay any attention to us out here. And Absalom says, well, if I were king, I would listen to all of you and deal with all of your matters directly and make sure you all had justice. But that's only if I were king, and I'm not, so let's not talk about it. And of course, the people say, oh, but what if you were king? Perhaps we could arrange that. And of course, Absalom forms a rebellion, revolt, and they go off and they attack David. David flees Jerusalem, leaves his home, leaves the palace. And eventually, as the two factions are fighting each other, David says to Joab, whatever happens, make sure Absalom is not hurt. Bring him to me safely. Well, as the two armies are chasing each other out, Absalom gets knocked off his horse and he gets caught up in his tree and he's caught in these branches and he can't get out of it. And the guys come along and Joab comes up and he says, "Oh, look at what we have here. How come he's still alive?" And they said, "Oh, no, you heard the king. He said, do not harm my son. I'm not going to be the one to do this." And Joab says, "Give me your spear." Stabbed him 3 times. Then they go and tell David, "Don't worry, job's done, you're safe." "What do you mean? Everybody's okay, right? I mean, my son's okay." No, he's dead. He's not going to do anything to you." And David is brokenhearted, and then you hear those words, "Absalom, oh Absalom, my son, what have I done?" This cry. And you hear about David looking out over the top of the palace wall and seeing Bathsheba bathing. Right? And he arranges for Uriah the Hittite to be killed so that he can take his wife, and he sleeps with her, and they have this child that they name Solomon. Right? But Nathan, and we won't go into it too much because it's going to come up later in the lectionary, and Nathan says, "What have you done?" Right? And David feels terribly guilty. But do you think that every time he looks upon this kid that he doesn't feel guilt about what he did? So guess what he does? "I don't want to see this kid." And he ends up doing that with all of his children. All of them are some reminder of the sins of the father. And so he pushes them all away. And where do you think that leads him? It almost seems to prove his point. It almost seems to say that, see, I knew it. If I screw up, God would punish me. And you see what's happening? But David, you're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy here, buddy. Why don't you see it? It's your actions. And haven't we all had a time when somebody says, "You know what? You got moxie, kid. You're going places. I'm going to see that you get to the top." Right? And then we do something. It could be something small, something big. But it's something we just, God, I can't believe I just did that. Right? And that person who promised you the moon and the stars says, "Can't help you here, kid. Can't help you on this one." Right? We've all heard that story. Could be somebody who was an alcoholic and lost their job. Could be somebody who had an affair and lost their job. Could be anything, right? Things happen. And they mess up their own destiny, so it seems. And it seems that they are being punished for their sins. And so David gets it. And he comes to a point where he says, "God, make of me your slave. Because every time I do something, I screw it up. Don't let me think on my own. Don't let me act on my own. For God's sake, I'm going to mess it up. Just control me. Do whatever is needed to be done so that I can't mess things up anymore." And this is David on his deathbed. Do what you need to do, and don't let me get in the way. Make of me a slave. Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. And then the flip side. The flip side that says, okay, I'm going to do so much good that it is impossible for God to want to punish me. I'm going to do every single good act and good work that I possibly can. And that's where we find the disciples. Every tiny little thing that they could possibly do right, they go out and they try to do it. And then they come back to Jesus and say, "Oh, well, we cast the demon out of this guy today. We healed this woman who had been sick for 27 years. We helped this guy to walk who hadn't walked in 18 years. And they're just going through the list, and Jesus finally says, "Go. Get away from the people. Go off by yourself. And find some solace. Find some peace. People are going to follow you. People are just going to want to say, oh, just this one little thing. Just, I know, I don't want to bother you. I know you're busy. I know you're tired. But can you just do this one little thing for me?" And Jesus says, "Get away from them." There are times when you need to stop and you need to rest. Because if you ever want to think that you get it, the way all of this works, you're going to have to step away from it. Anytime we think we get it, it means we put a box around God. Put God in a box, and we say, I finally understand. You ever catch a frog, or a cricket, or a spider, or a little bird, put it in a box with some grass, and cut holes in the shoebox? That's cute. For a while, until the thing suffocates and dies. Because it doesn't belong in a box. It can live there for a while. You can view it there for a while. You can enjoy it for a while. But when you realize that your mistake was capturing it, trying to put it in a box, then you're heartbroken. And that is what we do with God. We have to stop. We have to step back. And we have to find some peace in there. When I was reading these two passages, I'm like, these are so different. They have nothing to do with each other. I don't want to try to take a square peg and put it in a round hole. And I was sitting at the beach, and I just shut my eyes, and I just laid down and listened to the waves for a while. And after about 5 minutes, I go, Eureka! But that's what you have to do, right? You have to shut up, you have to get away, and you have to listen. Or don't listen. It doesn't matter. But in those moments of solace, not only are we going to find rest for our souls, not only are we going to be recharged and refilled, but in those moments of silence and peace, we're finally going to glimpse, just a glimpse, just enough understanding to find serenity, just enough peace to say that it's okay, that I will never have a little girl, just enough peace to say, I screwed up with my children, but God is going to take care of this. God is going to redeem this. Just enough peace to say that I've done some horrible things, but there will be reconciliation despite myself. And that God isn't waiting to punish me. And God isn't trusting that I will only be blessed when I do good things, but that I will find peace despite the fact that I may never, ever understand. And that's okay, because God is so much bigger than me. So when we think we understand,